Hello everyone, I hope you are doing well. So in this video, we're going to discuss what I believe is the best setup for competitive programming in today's scenario, and we're going to have a look at how I'm utilizing this particular setup to maximize my productivity during a contest or even while practicing. So this video is a little different from the videos I generally make. So I really believe that if everything goes well, a lot of people who have never visited my channel before will be watching one of my videos for the first time. So I would like to take this time to tell you guys about this particular channel. So what I generally do is I upload Geeks for Geeks, problem of the day, on a daily basis, and I also upload Codeforces contest editorials. So in case you guys are interested in that, you can definitely consider subscribing. You can see all of these videos are of these two types only. I really want to move on to lead code and code chef as well, but my schedule doesn't allow me to do so. So anyways, you can check out some of my videos, and there is one very important video that I would highly recommend you to watch, and that is about pre-compiling C++ headers, because it will really help you to compile your C++ code faster whenever you are including the bits/std C++ library. It will really help you to reduce your compile time. So this video is actually a bit old. It was uploaded 2 years ago, but anyways, you can watch that video, and let's get started with today's video now. So before starting off with the actual setup, let us just discuss some motivation. Why would you want to use this particular setup and why I primarily use it, right? So the first thing is it helps you to pass and check test cases automatically, right? So it does a lot of work automatically on your behalf, so you will have to do much less manual work. And the second thing, which I believe is one of the most important ones, is that it helps you to submit faster on Codeforces. So what do I mean by submit faster? That means you will just have a single button in your IDE only, and you can use that button to submit directly on Codeforces. So with the current setup, it not only works with Codeforces, and for the rest of the websites, you still have to manually submit it, but it will still be able to pass and check the test cases automatically. Right. Now, the third important point, which is important for me, but I believe a lot of people would be okay with this. It really helps you to keep your development and CP work organized and separate. So I see a lot of people who are using VS Code for both CP and development. I personally don't like it. I would want my work to be separate and organized. So that is why this really helps me. And the only thing that it cannot do is it will not help you to solve problems faster, right? So this is one major con of this particular setup, which I believe would be the case with every other setup that you will use. And you can only solve problems faster by practicing a lot. So that was it for the motivation for this particular video. Now let us first have a look at which IDE we are going to use. So let us quickly have a look at CP editor. So this particular editor is primarily for competitive programmers. As you can see, the missing editor for competitive programmers, and it has all the things that you need. So whenever I was using Sublime Text or VS Code for CP, there were always certain things here and there, like one or two things, which I always felt that if these issues were fixed, then my experience would become much better. Now this particular editor, CP editor, really takes care of all of it. Like most of the issues which I faced using Sublime Text or VS Code were fixed in this particular editor, right? So you can just quickly go on this download button, and here you can select your operating system. It is available for all of the systems, and also I'm going to leave a link to all the resources which I'm using here. I will leave a link in the description so you can just quickly check them out. So I'll be showing you a demonstration or a walkthrough for a setup for Windows, and the setup for all the other operating systems would be much similar, so you don't have to worry about it. Now we can select the version, and here you can select the asset. So basically they are giving out multiple setups. Some of them are the standalone setups, and some of them also include GCC. So we can just download this particular Windows setup for 64-bit if you have a 64-bit computer. Otherwise you can also download this x86 setup, right? Now you can also choose to download with GCC, but I believe that is beyond the scope of this video. Most of the people watching this video would already have GCD setup on their computer. So you can just select this version and click on download. Right, so this was all about CP editor. Now if you have downloaded it correctly, this is how the CP editor will look like. The first time you open it would be a lot different because I have customized it according to myself. So anyways, once you have installed this successfully, you can move on to the next step. Now you can go through these options to customize everything according to yourself, and I'm going to show you my preferences, what I generally use, but you are always free to customize it according to yourself, right? So first of all, if you open these preferences, you will be greeted with some very important settings, but you can just always start by customizing all of the settings manually. First of all, you can go to general and choose your programming language, C++, Java or Python. Then you can go to your own language. For example, if I'm using C++, here you can set the commands. So if you have followed my video on the pre-compilation of headers, then the C++ version that you are using to compile the headers should be the same version that you are using to compile your file. So with the C++ compile command, you should use the same C++ version that you are using to pre-compile your headers. So I believe like this thing actually makes a difference, and if you are using different C++ versions, then your pre-compilation headers will not help you much. Once you have done this, you can set your manual commands as well, as many commands as you want. And if you go to the template, then you can just give your file location for your template. For example, my template is in documents cpp/format.cpp, right? So this will help you to set up a default template for C++ language. Whenever I open a new file, you will see that all of my template would be taken from that particular file that I have given as a source, right? Now there are also a few settings here, and one of them is template cursor position. So there are actually 3 settings related to cursor position, what it actually is. So for example, whenever I create a new file, you will always see that my cursor is at this particular position. All of those 3 settings will help you customize this particular position. So for example, if I want to start writing code from here, I can set up my cursor here, right? So what are those settings actually? So first settings is the position regex. That means you have to pass something which is actually present in the code. So for example, I have written void solve. You can see void solve is present here, right? And my cursor position should be at the end, and my offset should be 26 characters, right? So you can just experiment with all the settings here, and you can find your perfect position of your cursor. So from this particular position, after 26 characters, this position was there. So that is why I written 26 here, right? You can obviously experiment through all the values and then customize to your own code. Now, next is the C++ snippets. This is also very important. Here you can just write down your snippets, and unlike Sublime Text or VS Code, you don't have to set up anything. You can just create a new file and then paste your code here, right? You just have to paste your code. Now whenever I want to use this particular snippet, I can just go to my editor, and whenever I want to use it, I can press Ctrl T, and then you will get this small dialog box, and then you can type the snippet that you want to use and then hit enter. So you will see that the whole snippet is printed here. So this is actually my snippet for segment trees. Now this will really help you to save much time during a contest, and you can just print all of this with a simple command, right? So let me just remove this. Now once you have discovered all of these settings, then you can go to appearance. So from here, it is just your personal style or preferences. You can set your theme and fonts as well. So we are not going to discuss this. So the next important thing that you would find here is these extensions, and the most important among them is these 3 extensions: competitive companion, CF tool, and worker time. So for this video, we're going to focus majorly on competitive companions and CF tool, because worker time is actually beyond the scope of this video. Let me just give you a slight introduction of what worker time actually is. So basically, worker time is an extension for all your IDEs, and it keeps track of whatever you are typing in your editor, right? So let me just show you my GitHub, and it will help you understand what it does. So with the help of worker time, I can keep track of what languages I am programming in, and from the worker time API, you can just get this type of information into your GitHub README. So this is just for my GitHub README, and it just helps it to make a little bit better looking and visually appealing. So you can see from in this period, I have coded a total for this number of hours, and the languages that I've used, and the amount of time I have spent on those languages, right? So worker time is actually used for this purpose. Now we are not going to use worker time. We are only going to focus on competitive companion and CF tool. So if you're using competitive companion with VS Code earlier, then you must be already familiar with this. So this extension helps you to pass test cases from any website. It supports major websites, and you can just go through all of these settings. And one of the important setting is connection port. So I don't know like whether it works with the default port or not, but I just use the port 12345. So you can just set any port here which is not used by any application on your device. So 12345 works in most of the cases, and then you have to go to your browser in which you will be like doing all of the stuff. So you can just search for competitive companion here, right? So it will show you Chrome extension. It is also available for Firefox as well, so you can go and download it. Here you can just install it. I have already installed, so it is showing me that. Now what you can do is you can just go to your competitive companion here, and you can go to options. So you have to set up the same port that you are using or that you have defined here in the connection port, right? The port must be the same. You can also try with the default values. By default it is empty, and you can also leave it empty and try doing the thing if it works or not. or you can just directly use this port 12345 and just make sure that you're using it at both of the places, right? Once you have set up your extension, you can just go to here and go to keyboard shortcuts, and then you can also customize what is the shortcut key that you want to use for your competitive companion, right? So for example, I'm using Control B, and we will see in a while this competitive companion in action and what it does, right? So for now, just know that this is a shortcut key, and from here you can set the shortcut key to activate your competitive companion, right? For the rest of the settings, you just have to leave it blank. Now let us have a look at the next very important extension, that is CF tool, right? So this is basically the extension that we are going to use to auto submit to Codeforces. So this is also very important. Let me just show you. So this is the block that talks about CF tools. So this is a command line tool which gives you many functionalities related to Codeforces, but we are going to use only one of the functionalities that it has to offer, and that is code submission. So you can just read about it, and at the end you can just directly go here on this particular link where you can download the latest version for your own device. So it has support for Linux, Mac OS as well as Windows, right? Once you have downloaded this, what you can do is you can just open and extract your file. So you will actually have a exe file for Windows. So now you can just go to your home folder. So for example, my username is Manas. So you can just go inside this folder and then create a folder called bin, right? So I'm also using Wakatime. So I also have Wakatime here, as well as I also have a cf.exe file, right? Both of these are command line tools, so nothing will happen if you try to open it from here or double click it, right? So once you have placed both of your files here, you can just go to your settings and then search for environment variables here, right? Now you can click on edit the system environment variables. So from here you can go to these environment variables and then click on this path and then click on edit, right? So here you have to enter your path where you have your pin folder, right? So basically what it does is it tells your system to look into this folder whenever I'm using the command line tools, right? The setup is very much similar for Linux as well as Mac OS. And for Linux, there is actually a file called bash rc which actually keeps track of the environment variables, and there must be some equivalent for Mac as well. So if you're stuck on this particular step, you can just make a quick Google search on how to set up environment variables for your own operating system, right? So once I've done all of this, you can just verify whether it is working or not. For that, you can open your terminal, right? So anything would work, PowerShell or CMD in Windows, and you have to type CF. So if you see this particular line, that means you have done all the steps correctly till now. Otherwise, you will see a message saying that CF command not found or something similar to that, right? So if you're seeing this, that means everything is set up correctly. And now the next step is to set up this particular CF tools to auto submit on Codeforces, right? For that, there is another block you can see here, and what you can do is you can just go on this particular block and expand this particular part, installation and setup of CF tool. Because this particular guide is very straightforward and simple to follow, you can just follow all of these steps. There is one very important thing that I would like to add, but before trying to apply it, you can just directly follow all of these steps and you would be good to go, right? So after you have followed these steps, I would tell you one thing, that you can just go here on your home folder and you will find this particular .cf folder here. Now you will also have a config file, right? So you can just go to here and I'll open it with Sublime Text. So you will see there is a language code present here. So while setting up, you will see that in this particular step, we have to select a language index. So what will happen when setting up your CF tools, when you are going to follow these steps, there is one step where you have to select a language index, right? So there will be multiple languages present on your screen and you have to select one of the languages. The problem with this particular method is C++ 17 64-bit is not one of the languages that you will see on the screens, right? So you will only have the option to select one of the languages that are present on the screen. After you have selected it, you can just go to this particular configuration file and you can just set the language code here to 61. So you have to do this step only if you want to use C++ 17 64-bit for submissions. Otherwise, you don't have to follow this particular step. Everything will be fine, right? And then you can just check whether your template files or your config file looks something like this or not. I use this particular config file and it works flawlessly for me. So you can just verify your file with this particular file, right? Now, once you have set up all of this, you should be good to go and everything has been set up on your device. Now, the next and the very important step is how do you actually parse the test cases and submit the problems. So this is actually one of the problems from a very recent contest. So what I like to do is, let's say this is my problem and this is my browser window. I like to put it here and I like to open my CP editor like this. Now I have both of the windows together, and I just make this window smaller so that it just fits all of the contents of Codeforces. Now when you have both of the windows together, it is very easy to have a look at the problem as well as your code at the same time. So this is just my personal preference. I like my layout to be like this. You can also try and experiment with your own layouts. Whatever works for you is a good layout. And now what you have to do is, remember, while setting up competitive companion, we use the keyboard shortcut to be Ctrl B. Now when you come on to this window and press Ctrl B, you will see that a blue line will pass from here. So you see it just passed, and a new file will be created in your CP editor, right? So the interesting part about this is, now let me just close these two files. Now all of the test cases have been passed automatically for us. You can see that this is the input and this is the expected output, right? Now I can just start writing more code from here. Now this particular CP editor offers you actually three modes. So first is the editor mode. The second is the IO mode, where you can just see your input, output, the messages and all of the other things. And the third mode is the split mode. So the split mode actually looks something like this, right? Where you see both of the things together. But since I'm using a layout like this, where I have two windows already open, this particular layout doesn't suit me very well, because there is really less screen space left for writing the code and for checking the test cases, right? So what I generally do is, I go to my split mode and just expand it to whole of it, right? So when I go to editor mode, it will look something like this, and my split mode will look something like this. So I'll tell you a very important reason why am I doing this. So you see that when you go to preferences, you can just set your keybinds for some of the functions. So for example, for compile and run, I have set up Ctrl plus B, and for change view mode, I have set up Ctrl plus E, right? Now I'll show you what happens when I press Ctrl plus E. But first of all, you have to remember this particular order. So the first mode is the editor mode, then we have the IO mode, then we have the split mode, right? So if I press Ctrl plus E, it will cycle through all of those modes. Currently it is in editor mode, then it is IO, then it is split, then again editor, IO, and then split, right? So the problem is, to switch from this editor mode to my IO mode and then again back to this editor mode, I have to press a couple of keys altogether. So what you can do is, I have shown you that I compile and run through Ctrl and B. So when I press Ctrl and B, it will open the split mode and start running my code, right? So you can see this is split mode by this particular thing. Now the most interesting part is that when I press Ctrl plus E again, it will switch to this editor mode. So what I generally do is, I press Ctrl B to run the test cases, and then I can just again press Ctrl plus E to quickly switch again to this editor mode, right? So I just like to keep this split mode to the full length. So I can press Ctrl plus E to go back to this editor and Ctrl plus B to go back to this particular window, right? So this is just my personal preference, and I like to do it this way because this helps me to quickly toggle between the editor as well as the IO mode, where I can see all the test cases and the output, and all of the statements that you print using CERR or the standard output will be printed in this messages section. So now what I can do is, let me just open this and open my last submission. So I'm just going to copy this. So you see here are a couple of details which are also included about the problem. So this part is actually included automatically, and this will just help you to give some idea of what the problem is about. So this is not actually very important, but it just looks cool on your submission. So that is why I have it. Right, now I have copied my submission, and let me just quickly paste it here. So this is my correct submission for the problem. Now I can press Ctrl plus B to just run the code and have a look at all of my answers, right? So you see it is telling me AC, and if I click on this, it will also show you the difference, right? What is the difference between the output and the expected output, right? So this part is also very important because it helps you to identify your mistake very quickly, right? Now let me just make some changes, and let me just write something else here. I'm just writing +1. So now when I run this, you will see it should give a wrong answer, and it will just give me a wrong answer. And when I click on this, you can see what is the difference between the expected output and my output. So this feature is also very useful. And now let me just go to my original code and just remove all of this and just compile it and run it for the one last time. You see, once I see that I've got an AC, then I can go back to my editor mode, and I have this nice little submit button here. Now I can just quickly click on the submit button and just click on yes here, now what it will do, it will just automatically do all of the things for me. It will say submitted, and now every second you will see, every second it is giving me an update on what test case it is running, and at the end it says accepted. So what we generally do on Codeforces is, whenever we click on the submit button, we just keep on refreshing the page again and again to get the status on every second. So this actually does that particular work for us, and you can see that this particular problem was submitted at this particular time, 21, 36 and 10 seconds. Then you get the next update on 10, then you get the next update on 12, then 13, then 15, and then you are getting the update on almost every second, right? And at the end you will also see the accepted verdict, or if the verdict is something else, you will also see that here. So this is also one very useful part about this particular extension, that it keeps you updated every second on the status of your submission. So I believe with this we mark the end of this video, and I have told you almost everything about my setup. So you can always customize it according to your needs. You have complete control over it, and remember that this particular setup will only help you to just be a little more productive and submit problems faster on Codeforces, but it will never help you to solve problems faster. That is obviously that you will have to put the hard work in. And that was it for this particular video. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and again I'll be leaving all the links to all the resources in the description so you can check them out. So that's it for today's video. If you liked it, then consider dropping a like, and don't forget to share your thoughts in the comment section, because your engagement with this particular video really helps the YouTube algorithm to understand that this video is actually helpful for you, and it will be able to reach more number of people like you who want to keep solving new problems. So if you're new to this channel, then definitely consider subscribing. It's always free of cost, and you can always unsubscribe if you don't find the videos interesting later. So share this channel with your friends, and until the next video drops, keep coding, stay safe, bye bye.